everyone. Welcome to the second and last episode of the RockerPod recap show for Chinese Nebelhorn, aka Skate to Milano. It was an exciting last day. There were some unexpected things that happened. There were some very expected things that happened, and I'm going to cover all of it. There's also a lot of implications of what's happened over the past couple of days, not just for the Olympic spots that have been qualified. Those are very clear as to which countries got them or which athletes got them, and then also how many spots there were and all of that kind of stuff. But there are implications as to also the next up countries, if any of the current countries decide to vacate their spot. That's likely going to happen. It happens every Olympics, and so we're likely going to see those. And there's also an implication to the team event, because what happened this week or this weekend at Skate to Milano Chinese Nebelhorn did have some effect on which countries ended up becoming eligible for the team event, which takes place at the very front of the Olympics in February. So we'll cover all of that. And as always, we've got a live show tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. Michelle and I will be talking about all the takes, whether they're hot or cold takes, all the takes on what happened this weekend and what we loved and what we wish had happened, or what we are most excited about watching again. So join us for that. Okay, let me start with the dance, because that was the first thing that happened this morning. This morning, our time, I guess. This morning, U.S. time, actually last night, U.S. time, and then this morning in Beijing. Reed Aberlovicius ended up winning, not a surprise. Harris and Chan ended up second, also not a surprise. So 198.73 for Reed Aberlovicius, which is actually the highest season best score of any of the ice dance teams so far. That is also to say many of the top teams have not competed in a season best eligible competition quite yet. So either way, great to see them cruise through, and Holly Harris and Jason Chan also cruise through with a 183.50. So those two, not a surprise at all. It was the next set of teams that were not just dramatic, but also maybe a little bit head scratching, if I'm being honest. Val and Kazimov were the third team to get the spot. So Spain gets a second spot. And go back. Lithuania gets a spot, and Australia gets a spot. I don't think any way they're not giving them to those two teams. Their countries are not giving them to those two teams. Val and Kazimov, same thing, with Olivia Smart and Tim Deek having qualified the two spots, but Val and Kazimov having to earn that second spot, and they got it. And it's crazy to think that after a decade of Spanish ice dance being sort of up and down, and also with a lot of highs, but also a lot of close calls to getting that second spot, Val and Kazimov and Smart and Deek are going to be the two teams for the first time for Spain entering the Olympics for dance. So that was, I wouldn't call it comfortable, but they had a 1.5 point margin over the next four teams. And the next four teams ended up being separated by 1.2 points. And I will tell you why that is important. Wang and Liu ended up getting China a spot. They So China, because they got a pair spot here, a um, a women's spot here, and then also now a pair spot. They have filled out their roster for all four disciplines at the Olympics, and so not only do they now qualify for the team event, but they are now one of the five countries that have qualified for in four disciplines individually. So that was, obviously a good thing for the Chinese Nebelhorn home crowd. But what ended up also happening was this very close race, right? Wang Yinglu 168.83, Reitan and Mayurov of Sweden 168.60, so less than a quarter of a point behind Wang Yinglu. Ignatieva and Zemko ended up moving way up. Well, not way up, I guess, from seventh to sixth, but they did put themselves in contention early on, 167.73, and then Yoshida Morita being that last of the four teams there that were really smushed together, 167.63. And the reason that I bring this up is because both Reitan and Mayurov and Yoshida and Morita ended up getting an exclamation point call on their character step sequence. And I'm going to nerd out a little bit here. The exclamation point call is basically what happens when the requirements of that choreographic element is not reached or is not fulfilled. And so there are a couple of ways that happens, right? You have to go basically, that choreographic character step has to go from one short side of the boards to the next short side of the boards. And you can't leave more than 2 meters between you as the skaters and the boards. And there's Yoshida Morita got an exclamation point once actually earlier this season at Kinoshita Group Cup and on that same element. And it looks like they probably called it for them ending, not ending farther than 2 meters away from the boards. So that was one. The other one was Reitan and Mayurov getting a exclamation point on their choreographic character step as well. I have pored over it multiple times trying to figure out what they could have called it for. It was not the 2 meter thing because they really did go from boards to boards. There's another potential, which is a repeat of steps from another step sequence, which didn't seem to be the case. And then there's another one where it's the potential that they themselves were too far apart at some point. It didn't look like it on the broadcast. Who knows if it actually looked like that in real life? So whatever that was, both of those teams ended up basically a point to a point and a half lower than they otherwise would have been because of that choreographic character step call. And so when your actual deficit to fourth place, which was the final automatic spot, was 0.23, which is the Swedes, and then 1.2, which was the Japanese. That was the thing that made the difference. And now there was also with Reitan and Mayurov, as the judges were, or as the panel was reviewing elements, there were a couple of elements that ended up getting reviewed down in level. And so that also cost them points. So anyway, for me, the Swedes and the Japanese teams, they both, for me, skated a stronger program than Wang and Liu and should have been higher in components relative to them. So whatever the technical elements were, it is what they were, and that is what it is. That is also to say these were all very closely matched teams in a lot of ways, and the fact that they ended up being split by 1 point, 2 points is a testament to actually how close they were. So that is how it shakes out. So Lithuania, Australia, Spain's second spot, and China, they get the last 4 spots. Sweden is the first alternate. Hungary is the second alternate. Japan is the third alternate. And the thing that we keep saying is there's a likelihood that Finland will not use their second spot because the second spot currently would go to a team that does not have citizenship. And even the next team, the Finnish senior dance only has 3 teams, and so the second and third teams don't have all the citizenship requirements, and so they are trying to continue to go through the process. There is a likelihood that that spot gets given out or given back to the pool, and in that case, Reitan Mayarov / Sweden gets the next spot. So we'll see what happens over the next few months. And, Reitan Mayarov, they will obviously continue training. Europeans, Worlds, all of that is still in play. So that's dance. And so we started off with a lot of dramatics early on, and then we got even more dramatics with the men. And what happened with the men was there were 5 spots that were available coming into the free skate. Peter Gumenek, Donovan Carrillo, and Francois Pitot looked like they had a very comfortable cushion over the next set of many guys who are sort of very close within each other's range. Peter Gumenek ended up sailing away with the title 260-282, landed a couple of clean quads and sort of squeaked out a bunch of others. Hyung-Young Kim had a great skate. The only mistake that he had was a quarter turn short on his triple axel, but basically a clean skate, and moves up from 4th to 2nd. Donovan Carrillo got a little bit scary there because he was making mistake after mistake in that free skate, but because he had such a large cushion over those that next set of guys, he ended up getting third, 222.36. And so, not unlike the dance teams that we saw earlier on, there was a squishing of men in the next 4 spots. And so 4th through 7th were separated by 3 points. And Kirilo Marsak ended up getting that 4th spot for Ukraine, 217.57. And then it was Yuseong Lee who gets Taipei the 5th and final spot, 216.98. So those are your 5. Gumenek, Korea's 2nd spot, Mexico, Ukraine, and Chinese Taipei, they get those 5 spots. David Lutenbrain, who was 5th after the short program, had a mistake on his final spin, and it cost him about 2 points. And it ended up 6th, less than a point behind 5th and that final spot. And so that was heartbreaking. It was this skate and competition of his life. And he's got to be proud of that. But it's so close. He ended up in 6th place behind Yuseong Lee by 0.86. So that's heartbreaking. Francois Pitot, as I was mentioning earlier, he had a fairly large I think 7 points over the next over fourth place. He was in third after the short program. He made all kinds of mistakes also in the free skate. Tried to get it back later on, threw in an emergency triple axel right at the end. Didn't work. It was just too little too late, and he ended up in seventh with 2:14.57. So we'll talk more about all the programs later on this evening when Michelle joins me for the live podcast. But those were your top your five, and then your next three for the spots will be Monaco getting the first alternate, Czechia getting the second alternate, Germany getting the third alternate, and you're wondering what happened to France. So the rules state that, or at least the way that I read the rules, is that the spots that or the countries that get any unallocated spots or spots that get given back to the pool are the countries that have not yet gotten a spot in that discipline. So that takes out France, who's already qualified 2 spots into that discipline. So I'm gonna try to find the actual wording of this because it's important. And I think there we go. Qualification places obtained and not used for the individual events by the National Olympic Committees will be filled by standby NOCs, National Olympic Committees, based on the final result of the designated qualifying competition in Beijing for those NOCs not qualified and not yet represented. So the way that it's written and the way that I read it is that France would not get one of those spots if it does come down to the alternates, because France has already qualified spots and is represented in the men's event. So that's the same thing. It would be the case for ice dance. No, not ice dance. For the women, where Estonia's second spot would have been next in eligibility, so they don't actually get that. Sweden ends up in the third alternate spot there, and then for pairs, the U.S.'s third spot would have been next in eligibility as the third alternate, but they don't get that, and so the third alternate spot goes to Czechia for the pairs. Lots to say about that. We can talk about that more. If you have any questions, send them to me. I will try to answer them later on tonight when we go on for our live show. And lastly, team event eligibility. So lots of people have asked about that. Coming into this event here, there were 9 countries that did enough at Worlds to qualify or to be eligible for the team event. And so there are 10 spots for the team event. 9 countries were eligible. And to be eligible, you have to have qualified individual spots in at least 3 of the 4 disciplines. And so at that point, only 9 teams or 9 countries had done that. Here, because of what China did, they ended up getting themselves into that group. And so now 10 countries have the eligibility to qualify for the team event. And there are 10 spots for the team event. So you would imagine that that is going to be the case. There are 5 countries that qualified in all 4 disciplines: Canada, China, Georgia, Italy, US. And then there are 5 countries that qualified in 3 disciplines: France, Great Britain, Japan, South Korea, and Poland. So what's interesting with that is if you have 3 disciplines qualified, there are 5 extra spots that can be allocated to the what do you call it? To the team event if they need to fill a 4th discipline. And so, as coincidence would have it, there are 5 countries that are missing a spot. And so The way that it's written that there are 5 skaters spots that are eligible, but then it talks about skaters slash couple. It's a little bit inconsistent the way that it's written, and it remains to be seen whether a a a pair or a dance team fills up 2 skater spots, or if when they say skater it means skater slash couple. Um, I have to go back and read it all over again, but it's either that all 5 of these countries are going to get that fourth spot, fourth discipline filled, or it's that depending based on the actual number of points that are accumulated by all the competitions that are part of the eligibility criteria, some of them get allocated. I will read it again, see if I can make sense of it before tonight's show, but that is where that is going to be. The other question that I've been getting is if a country doesn't have a discipline, for example, South Korea does not have an active an eligible pair that they have, can they still be in the team event? Yes, they can. They will just take a 0 for the pairs event, for example, for Korea. So that's kind of how that's going to work. Now, France would take a pair. Great Britain would take a men's spot. Japan would take a dance spot. Korea would take a pair spot that they don't currently have and can't fill. And Poland would take a dance spot. So if you take a look at that, it's either going to be 4 skater slash couple spots, or it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 athletes, in which case 2 of those athletes don't get in. I don't think that's the case. But again, I will read it more diligently and see if I can glean anything from that. Okay, that's a lot of nerding out and talking about very, very technical things. But I hope you all enjoyed the Skate to Milano / AKA Chinese Nebelhorn event. It was exciting. We'll talk about this more tonight, but I did enjoy it more as a standalone event than I would have in the traditional Nebelhorn setting where it's commingled with an actual Challenger Series event. So that was I didn't expect that to happen. I actually expected to be like, oh, you know, should just go back to Nebelhorn, but this was unexpected for me to feel that way. We'll talk more about that. I'm sure Michelle has some opinions on that. But until tonight, which is in 13 hours at 8 p.m. Eastern time when we have our live weekly show, this is Jackie Wong, Chief Skate Nerd of RockerSkating.com, and you've been listening to the RockerPod recap show of the final day of Skate to Milano Chinese Nebelhorn. Talk to you tonight.